Welcome to Barton Dunant's An Introduction to Comprehensive Emergency Management for Schools, with a focus on the paradigm shifts needed for school-related shooting incidents. Emergency management is all about adverse impacts from threats and hazards. We do this before, during, and after incidents happen. We help prepare others to respond, protect against, prevent, respond ourselves, recover from, and mitigate against the adverse impacts to life safety, incident stabilization, property and asset protection, economic, environmental impacts, and we conduct restoration recovery work in that order. There's a lot to handle in emergency management, but school districts have the capability to work through this both themselves and collaborate with others to do this. Today we're going to cover, as a seminar, a quick introduction, some before checklists, some during checklists, and some after checklists, and then the next steps that you need to do as a district. Here's the full cycle of any type of incident. There's the before, during, and after. And when it comes to before, the categories that we call in emergency management are mitigation, preparedness, protection, and prevention. These are all the things before the next bad thing happens, whatever it is. And then during, we have response and what we call interim or short-term recovery. And then afterwards, right afterwards, is long-term recovery and mitigation planning, and the cycle starts all over again. You'll notice mitigation planning is at the end, and the actual mitigation efforts and actions are the before. So it all cycles together. So questions, why are you watching this presentation, this webinar, this seminar? Are you an emergency manager in a school district now? What response planning does your district have in place now? How well do you think you collaborate and coordinate now with other organizations that may have response planning responsibilities for your district or with your district? And then as part of an after checklist, what recovery planning does your district have in place now? Let's jump right in and talk about the elephant in the room. We are all concerned about active shooters or the active assailant at our schools and adversely impacting our students, staff, and others. This threat is like the EF5 tornado for school safety officials. But the reality is that this is not the only threat that schools need to plan for. Over time, by far the highest count of incidents involving a shooting at a school was not an active shooter, but rather an escalation of a dispute. Most times these are over, the incidents are over before police arrive at the school. There are weather conditions and intelligence which makes a community prone to tornadoes, places to be safer from a tornado than others, training to respond toward tornado warning and crisis communications about the before, during, and after or tornado strikes. Emergency managers do not plan for only tornadoes, and schools need to plan for threats on an all hazards basis, which includes a very wide variety of incidents around the discharge of a gun at school. Just as a carpenter does not have only a sledgehammer in their toolboxes, schools need a wide variety of actions, reactions, and communication tools in their toolboxes. So when it comes to a before checklist, think about what you do when you would plan for and be trained for on first aid. Check, call, care. We'll cover that in a second. Here's the before checklist items related to school incidents involving shootings or guns at school. So CPTED is an acronym which means Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. This is a very broad group of professional activities which are designed to make sites safer and can include everything from physical barriers to camera systems to locks on doors. We're going to say one size doesn't fit all quite a bit in this session. One size does not fit all. But this is the one exception. What you do to protect your school from the adverse impacts of a school-related shooting incident cannot be at the expense of fire safety or a medical emergency on campus. As emergency managers, we take a step back and make sure that one type of protective or preventive element does not compromise another. The more schools become fortresses at keeping bad people out, they also prevent good people from coming in to help. This is why we don't have barbed wire fences around football stadiums. This is why you have an ambulance on site and a clear path to exit at basketball games. The same bollards at the school, which stop a terrorist from driving through the front door, will also stop the parent who had a heart attack, or the newly minted teenage driver who mistakes the brake and the gas pedal. But you still want to plan for how the fire truck can quickly get to the dry sprinkler connection. SROs are school resource officers, a term widely used to represent a trained law enforcement professional, usually armed, and with direct radio communications to local law enforcement and public safety dispatching. How does your SRO interact with school staff? How are they involved in all hazards, emergency action, and exercise planning? What is their role in the incident command system when incidents occur? How does your notification system work before, during, and after incidents involving your school? This one we'll do an entire seminar on at some point. BTAM stands for Behavioral Threat Assessment Management. There's a lot to unpack here too. Many states mandate these teams, and whether individual schools have the staffing resources to support them is a question. Emergency management professionals view these teams as hugely positive if they are continuously trained and exercised and are collaborative with other community emergency management groups. And by the way, if you have your own district emergency management team, are they part of your BTAM? They should be. These circles intersect at many points and cannot operate as silos. Take, for example, a university's BTAM, who flags an early education senior as a threat. What if that person is a student teacher in your district? Will your BTAM be notified? And finally, we'd like to introduce you to an emergency management problem-solving continuous improvement methodology known as POETE, P-O-E-T-E. POETE stands for plans, organization or staffing, equipment, training, and exercising. It's a cyclical project management technique we use for threats and hazards in emergency management. We also use it to categorize changes or fixes needed after exercises and incidents. You can too. As part of your before process of checklisted items, use a quick list of 3 tasks we hope you have all learned from the first aid training I mentioned before. Check, call, care. Check what you have in place on now. Call partners, stakeholders, other school districts, consultants like us, whomever, to find out how best practices and ways to improve for your district. And care. Take care of your folks. That's pretty simple, but it is key. Your plans, sites, equipment, systems, training, exercises, all should prioritize life safety above all else. And this includes mental health and wellness too. In emergency management, exercises are more than jumping into full-scale exercises involving guns and hoses, and always a lot of confusion and stress for everybody on those. Did you know airports regularly exercise a wide variety of threats and hazard scenarios? Plane crashes, bomb threats, and everyone's favorite, active shooters. Do they use passengers to do this while they're traveling through an airport? Heck no. And why not? Well, primarily it's about the money. They run exercises on weekends at midnight in unused terminal areas and buildings under construction. People don't go through all the stress of air travel today in order to participate in an exercise. Why do we do things the opposite way at schools? Kids go to school to get educated. Before you design and plan an exercise at your school, any type, even fire drills, follow that same check, call, care order. Check what you are exercising and who needs to exercise it. Call in partners and support. Coordinate with them from the planning phase through the post-exercise phase. Did you know there's a post-exercise phase? It's as important as the response phase. Here's where the care part comes in. There are massive stress and trauma aspects to active shooter exercises, even tabletop or discussion ones. As part of the debriefing process, which leads to the creation of the after-action report and improvement plan, there needs to be a critical incident stress debriefing for everyone involved. Bottom line, if you think it's too traumatic for the students to participate in an incident stress debriefing process, age appropriate of course, then they really should not be players in the exercise. Exercises need to follow the same process and ethics as academic research subjects. Informed consent and all that. Your planning, organization, equipment, training, and exercising, your poetic, needs to align with the pathway to violence for active assailant attacks. This means you need to have plans to intervene and prevent a school attack at each of these steps. By doing this, you're protecting the students, staff, and the responders. But this only covers the candidates for threat actors that you have control or supervision over. For schools, this is only what we call the insider threat. Does it make sense for a police department to attempt to disrupt an attack on a school from the outside and not include communicating to the school on intelligence? Does it make sense for a school to attempt to disrupt an attack on a school from the inside and not include communicating to the police on intelligence? Did anyone include the hospital or the fire department in this mix? Can you see how failing to coordinate, collaborate, cooperate, and communicate on a whole of community basis can lead to problems? You can still protect students' individual privacy rights, and the police can still protect the civil rights of outsiders in this process. These tools in the toolbox are working now in school districts and community emergency management groups across the nation as part of their BTAM, or Behavioral Threat Assessment Management Team process. But again, it's not one size fits all. An electrical fire in a school generating smoke into the ventilation system still needs a plan of action for everyone's life safety. Whether you evacuate the entire building or to where and repopulate the building or not, recover from the trauma and evaluate all these process steps for future improvement is the question which follows emergency management, are the questions which follow emergency management principles. So in terms of a during checklist, NIMS ICS is the National Incident Management System, Incident Command System. This is what we use in emergency management in almost all of the United States for any incidents of scale. You too can use ICS for an event such as a parade in a community, a street fair, etc. Same for the sports or theater events at the school. In the national system, there are emergency management principles which help with coordination, cooperation, collaboration, and communication. Things like a unified command made up of multiple lead organizations and the concept of unity of effort. And using an ICS puts everyone on the same page. They may have different tools in different toolboxes, but everyone is working off the same set of blueprints, so to speak. A JIC stands for a Joint Information Center. This is about coordinating your messages to the public. Are your school's crisis communications being coordinated with those of the community's public safety groups? Are they being distributed via multiple channels for oversaturation and in the languages needed in your community? A Joint Information Center can help coordinate and communicate all of this to the public. Reunification is the process of reconnecting students with their families. As we know, schools have a high level of custodial care which must be maintained, especially when an incident occurs. Where is your relocation center located? This may need to be adjusted based on the active assailant threat, as compared to a weather or fire threat. Are there more than one sites for your district? Do you have a templated crisis communications message ready to go when you need them? When was the last time you exercised the reunification process? And of course, in the during phase, you will use that same check, call, care construct we've talked about before. You are checking for threat validation, threat intelligence, etc. You are then calling for help and calling out to your staff and partners via alert systems. And finally, you are caring for your students, staff, and others through the response and recovery steps. This includes not only their physical health, but their mental health and wellness. Have you built trauma-informed messages for the student, staff, and the public to include aftercare monitoring? There are a whole host of questions in this box. And candidly, in emergency management, we are still in the infancy of understanding how well or poorly this works now for active assailant exercises, let alone attacks themselves in schools. The research data is just not out there yet. terms of after, recovery needs the check, call, care process as well too. Check in with families and staff. Call for help from outside groups like mental health counselors and trauma specialists. Your own team will be adversely impacted from the incident, and continue to care for each other. 6 years later, the 1200 building at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland is scheduled to be demolished in the summer of 2024. That's a really critical thing. So there may not be a capability of site restoration. That's one of the after checklist things. We mentioned mental health and wellness. That's been a continuous process. There may be memorials to plan. And of course, there's absolutely should be an after-action report improvement plan. Are you prepared to participate in this process and make positive changes based on recommendations from that plan? These are things your district has to answer. You can and should exercise for every threat and every hazard, every phase, before, during, and after too. Not all in one exercise, of course. We mentioned crawl, walk, run a few slides ago. You should start with seminars and workshops. That's where you learn about the plans, organization, or who does what, equipment used, training needed, and other exercises planned. These items in yellow on the graphic, the first 4 of them, that is seminars, workshops, tabletop exercises, and games, are called discussion exercises. And the ones in orange, the ones on the right side, drills, functional exercises, and full-scale exercises, are performance ones. First you talk, then you do. This video you're watching now is a seminar. And all types of exercises are practiced for more than just the people. Your team is also exercising the plans, equipment, training, and the exercise itself. That last part about evaluation is the most important. What went well during the exercise, even a seminar or tabletop, and what needs improvement in the plans, organization, equipment, training, and future exercises. Active assailant attacks are what is described as an agile threat. It is constantly evolving, and the response efforts by schools and public safety officials must constantly evolve as well too. We both study incidents from the past. What we see as failures to protect life safety, they see as victories to be celebrated and emulated. Vigilance is the key word here. So is wisdom. So thank you, and please let us know how we can help you move forward. In the comments section on the video, you'll find our email address, and it'll also be tagged at the end as well too. Thanks again for watching, and take care.